What's up, everybody? Welcome back. My vacation is over. I'm coming to you. Just that. That's annoying. I'm coming to you live from the new compound, San Antonio, Texas. We made the move. Took us a couple of weeks to get straight. I'm going to make this a short one. I have some Q&As from the Patreon crew that I want to get to just because I really want to touch base with you guys. It's been too long since I put anything out. And I have a long list of ideas and topics I want to get to so I can go back to making some fleshed out, well edited, really substantial videos. But I wanted to touch base. So this is going to be just a short Q&A, give you some updates on where I'm at and what you can expect in the future. And let's get this going. First and foremost, took us 3 days to drive out here from California. Uh, Easy driving, just 20 total hours. Wasn't that bad. But we got here, we had a money pit situation where there were a bunch of things that the inspector, I think, either looked over. I don't know, maybe some money changed hands for him to look over. And we overlooked in our walkthrough. And there were a good 24 things that we had to spend the first week here doing to kind of make it livable. The previous owners or previous tenants were like 420-something-year-old car salesmen that just let the house go to crap. Water softener hadn't been updated in years, so everything was destroyed. Kitchen sink was useless. Shower heads were useless. They had dogs. We got the carpets about 3 shades lighter by getting them cleaned. It just stunk of urine in here. That's probably why we got such a good deal on it. Anyways, so we're here now. Finally got the big stuff settled in. Getting something that looks like a studio thrown together. So, all right, getting into the real stuff. This is what you're all here for. And feel free to ask questions. If there's something short or quick I can get to, I got about 3 or 4 questions that I want to get to from the Patreon members, and then I'll get through some of the meatier ones you guys leave. I'm gonna shoot for about a half hour or so, but you know me, I always overshoot. So starting off with Thomas Dones, frequent contributor to the Patreon. And if you guys haven't checked it out, check out our Patreon. It's a good way to support what I do. It's a reason that I'm able to do what I do. And it's an easy way for me to give priority because I can't answer everybody's questions at all times. So we have a good community there, a lot of repeat contributors. So Thomas Dones asks, he's having some real issues hitting depth on squat. So he got some squat shoes and is hitting depth okay. He's trying to drop into the hole similar to Dan Bell. And he's noticing that it's harder to load slowly into the hips like he used to. He says, I feel more stable while standing, but I have really issues with having this massive quad pump almost no matter what I do and feeling very unsteady on the way up. Any idea why? Yeah, that's actually pretty straightforward. If you look at the way that Dan, let me take these timestamps down, man. I got a bunch of shit for not keeping track of the timestamps on the last Q&A. So I'm going to do my best, but we'll see. If you look at the way Dan Bell squats, Dan Bell is a very upright squatter. I feel like I have a similar build to him just as far as frame proportions, shorter legs, longer torso. If you see where he puts his belt, you see how much real estate is left over across his torso. And you see how easy he just drops straight down into the hole. There's a lot of front to back motion. His torso angle doesn't change very much. Very efficient squatter. You're going to see that's like the most efficient squatting proportions. If you're looking at coming just straight up and down like a piston, there's some Olympic weightlifters that look like that when they squat. Very, very short femurs, which means as you come down, that front to back distance is really small. So it's easy to just plop straight down and come back up. So if you're trying to squat like Dan Bell and that's the way you're doing it, there's a trade-off. The trade-off is because everything is coming straight up and down, you have much less margin for error with what your femurs are doing as you come down, which means that if you get a half inch or an inch forward or back, it's very, very easy to feel unstable because you got the barbell balanced on top of this piston. And if there's any front to back, you're going to feel very unstable. And I could see how the Olympic lifting shoes would facilitate that. They allow your knees to go a lot more forward than your normal ankle mobility will allow for. And with that very upright, very forward knee position, it's just you're balancing on the head of a pin. Now, if you have a style where your hips are allowed to come back, well, now you're loading your posterior chain a little bit and your hip extension is contributing to moving the barbell up. So you can get pitched forward a little bit and everything is supported by the posterior chain, keeping that tension through your hips so that they can extend through on the way up. So that's what the instability is. You can get used to it. It takes a little bit of time. Just make sure that you're looking for control and consistency. Your descent is going to have to be the same every time, and wait until you're comfortable with it before you try doing these aggressive, like Olympic style bounces. Because the guys that can stay completely upright and just bounce out of the bottom, everything is just automatic. It's programmed. It's never different. So just stick with it. Um, Depending on your leverages, I could tell you that that might not even be the way you should be aiming to squat if you're not built quite like Dan Bell, or if it's not obviously better, stronger, more secure. But if it's a style you've committed to, your best, you get good at how you train. You're best off just sticking to it and not trying to reinvent the wheel. So that's my 2 cents on that. Going to MIDI. Oh, sorry. One more point. He was talking about the quad pump. The quad pump, again, staying upright and the knees going forward. It just puts the knee through more range of motion, which means the quads get activated more. So you're getting a quad pump. That's probably why you should stay with that setup, because it's showing that your quads are unconditioned. If you're getting a quad pump, means they're behind. Quads are the big mover in the squat, especially an upright squat. So stick with that. Your quads will grow, get stronger, get more resilient. That should go away eventually. Sorry. Okay. Last bit on that. So going to MIDI, another Patreon member. He's had this issue where on the day of testing, he doesn't hit a PR, but all the warm-ups move extremely fast. He said it happened after the 5-week DUP bench program that I gave out. I gave that out some time ago. And another on an overhead press program he ran. He's 100% sure it's not an issue of recovery, as he ate and slept well. Could I give my take on what the problem is? So if you're noticing your warm-ups move extremely fast, um, like they're just uniquely quick, like more so than they normally would be. Um, that sh- that's a sign that you're better, right? It's a sign that you're stronger. I mean, if the RP is changing, the weight's staying the same, RP is dropping with the same weights, that's a sign you've gotten stronger. So if it leads to you through the warm-ups not hitting a PR, I mean, there's a couple different things that could be, and it's hard to pinpoint without me being right there. It could be your psychology, getting over anxious. It could be you over warm up to hit the PR. You do too many sets and going fatigued. So it could be a problem with your weight jumps, your weight selection. Um, I mean, it could be that your warm-ups aren't actually moving that fast and you really haven't grown from the program. If you say you ate and slept well, so if you follow the program, you should be a little better off than when you started. But it's easy to go in and think everything's moving well, and you're really not that much stronger overall. What you're able to do with the maximal load is going to dictate how much progress you had. So barring some psychological issue or some problem with selecting your warm-up weights, it's really just telltale that you haven't gotten stronger. So look at those first two things. If there's nothing you can tweak there, then the program may not have just paid off. Now, if you can look at back off sets, if you can look at AMRAP sets, there's a lot of ways to decide if you've actually gotten stronger without hitting a 1 rep max. If you drop back and you have an idea of what a max set of 10 would be, have you improved on that, or a certain percentage if you hit it for an AMRAP and see. So you should have a good enough idea of where these benchmarks are all the way up, going up to a 1 rep max. It'll give you some insight. If those suggest that you've gotten stronger, then it's definitely a byproduct of how you're warming up, how you select your weight jumps, some psychology. I know I'm a head case when it comes to new PR, especially ones I really want. It's easy to kind of screw yourself out of what should be an easy attempt. Now, if it is a fact that you haven't gotten stronger, then it's a problem with the way the program was run, or might be a problem with the program itself, that it's something that's not necessarily appropriate or tailored for you, and that's important to take note of as well. So with my DUP program, it's very, very high frequency. It could be that you weren't quite recovered enough going into it. I do give a little time at the end to test, a little deload. Could be that it wasn't enough time. Could be that another week or two of lower volume is really what you need to flesh that out. So that's a lot of fatigue in a short period of time. So that's why. But without me being there, it's really hard for me to say. I'm really just guessing. Going into the next one, we got Tree Coins. He's asking about diet and men and women. Another question about the difference between men and women. I'm going to play a hot potato with this one. He's just asking because his girlfriend's going to start training and he doesn't know how she should be eating in order to strike a balance between muscle and fat gain. She's concerned about getting fat. It's a common problem with females as they get into lifting. Socialization takes over and they worry about getting too big or getting fat. But he knows that she has to eat more to make real progress, which it might be true, it might not be. It depends on some factors. In general, yeah, you're probably going to need more protein intake than you use. A lot of people, though, eat enough calories to grow. Complete novices, I mean, the average American diet is just, I mean, at this point, the average first world diet is just a calorie surplus. So if you're a novice, you can generally grow without ticking up your calories off the bat too much. Can you ballpark me a calorie surplus or just give some insight into lifting eating for women? Thanks. So this is another point where we can generally chart differences over groups. We can look at aggregates between this group or that group, and you go men, women. You can go, ethnicity or nationality. You can go by height. You go by limb proportion, experience, whatever you like, and you can find differences if you're to hypothetically group everybody and measure how they react to something and find a little play in the margins. My take on that is that it matters, or it might matter, if you're way out on the ledge, if you're already very specialized, if you've already had this very long journey and you've gotten stronger and you're more elite and you have to like walk this thinner tightrope, those factors might make a difference. At the novice stage, it makes almost no difference. It's almost not even worth talking about because so many of the triggers for growth are the same for everybody. And then when you factor a margin of error and how people actually go through these things in real life, fixating on the minutia isn't going to do anybody any good. So that's the way that I see that. With diet, that's especially true. I mean, if you're looking at fat loss leading out, you just have to get a handle on food proportions, and you can follow a basic split of macros. There's a lot of different types out there, and they've all have success, I think, in some way, shape, or form. I'm not a nutritionist, man. I'm the last person to ask at this because I attack my diet like a caveman. I do not trial and error. I titrate. So I eat about the same thing every day. When I know it's time to grow, I start ticking up the amount of meals I eat. I get a little loose with what I'm eating. I get a little fat when I'm bulking. And then when I'm trying to take it down, the first thing I do is clean up the quality, the quality of the food, whatever the hell that means, right? And then I start to titrate down day to day, week to week, how much I'm eating until I see the scale to move. So because that process applies, don't look at it as specific rules for her. Set a baseline, make changes day by day. You have to have a day-to-day control of your diet in order to see progress anyways. So you have to take accountability for the fact that you're in control for making those decisions. If it makes you feel comfortable, there's plenty of people that do dieting and nutrition plans. And you can look at somebody who has worked with a lot of men and women, or you can look at a female competitor if you think that she would feel more comfortable learning from somebody who's gone through and dealt with those issues specifically. I know my wife went through. Our friend Brittany, who is a bodybuilder. She's a very good nutritionist. She's very thorough. And I know that my wife felt like she was eating too much, and she was eating more than I was on some days, but it was clean foods that aren't very calorie dense. So she was always full. I mean, if you're trying to add mass, you're going to have a few hundred calorie surplus each day, but it depends on what her immediate goals are going to be. So I whatever just generic advice I could give right now, it's not going to be nearly as good as if you just find somebody to throw together something. I mean, I know a lot of people that did the If It Fit Your Macros thing. I don't know if that's still around or if that's still a thing, but you can go to ifitfitsyourmacros.com and they have macro calculators and you can figure it out there, work the rest yourself. So there's some affordable paid options. There's plenty of free options. You just got to do the legwork. Going on to last one from the Patreons, and then I'm going to start to get to the questions and comments from the chats. This is from Leinenkugel von Doofenfacher, frequent contributor on the Patreon page. Let's talk about how he tweaked his neck, and now he can't bring his head through on strict overhead press without aggravating it. So he stopped bringing his head through, and he says he's 2 reps stronger. So it's actually a stronger position for him. Maybe he was moving his torso too much when he's bringing his head through. Doesn't know. He said he did it on a set of 12 and wonders if it's is this something that only works in a higher rep range? Can I expect to be stronger this way at lower rep ranges? It's kind of an oddly specific question, but I'll break it down. So I actually routinely get neck tweaks in the base of my neck that drive me crazy, like right here when I'm pressing. And it's for a lot of reasons. I think I do have some scar tissue back there from some injuries I've had or generic inflammation. I don't know if it's nerve. I don't know if it's a muscle getting strained, but I've had that a few dozen times. Like every few months, I'll do it, especially on really heavy attempts. And it makes it hard to get your head through. So when you're doing that, when you're pushing your head through, the upper arm is coming back by the ear, your head's going forward. So everything's stacked very vertically. What some people do instead is they'll just push slightly out in front. You'll see some people do it where they'll lean back a little, push slightly out in front. Now, the reason that might be stronger is it's a less complex movement. So instead of going vertically, you're actually going up and then in a sense pushing back and sticking your head through on a jerk. That's what you want to do because it gets you immediately makes you stable. You can handle a ton of weight with your head through. If you get your head through and snap that elbow to lock out, this is how watch Olympic lifting videos. Watch these guys how they jerk 500 pounds, close to 600 pounds. And that's how they do it. The head has to come through, weight gets stacked through a locked out elbow, nice and tight in the pocket right here. And you're just very stable. For strict pressing, I don't love that movement. It's unnecessarily complex. You have this front to back movement that doesn't necessarily, it's not like benching where it's easy to ramp back as you lock out, as you come up and back. It puts you in a stronger position. That's a very easy maneuver to pull off. With overhead pressing, I think it's a little more clunky and takes away from it. So a lot of examples of really good, strong military pressers that just push in a straight line. Just make sure it's not that shit where it comes forward. So you have to like snap and catch it because if you hold it, it'll fall out in front. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If it's mechanically stronger and you're able to gut out some more reps, you should expect to be stronger, I would think, on heavier weight. But what the hell do I know? You're not going to know that until you try. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know a bunch of really good pressers that do that. And it is more stable for a strict press. And that's evident by the amount of really big pressers that press that way. All right, so good. We got a nice pool of questions to go from. I'll try to take them one by one here. I'm going to give you guys about 10, 15 more minutes here, and then I'm going to get going onto some actual video editing, which feels like I haven't done in a lifetime. Matt C. Bromley, a legend. Thanks, brother. Appreciate that. Question from Teal Van Den Wevel. Oh man, he told me how to pronounce his name last time and I completely forgot. I think I pronounced it Wevel. Is it Hovel? I think it's Hovel. In base strength, you emphasize the need for waves of intensity, but you also say beginners can basically push to the max often because their max isn't taxing. Do I understand right? That's actually right. If we're talking about the difference, this is really what separates. There's a few things, but what separates novices, intermediate, and advanced is this kind of obtuse, abstract idea of how you can group people based on experience. And it's not entirely clean, but it's still useful enough to talk about because it makes some training decisions easier, more so than what I talked about earlier about these other groups like, gender, race, or any of the other shit that people fixate on regarding performance or whatever. Experience is probably the most useful one, even though that by itself still isn't quite clean. The big thing that separates those are going to be those groups is going to be how you respond to training. The basic idea being that novices are artificially weak and untrained and unconditioned. They respond to just about anything, which we know to be true. You get a young, unconditioned teenager, they can break themselves on the wall. They can recover from anything. They can go as hard as possible. If you get a novice, even who's later in life, they can still recover from hard training counterintuitively, right? Because you would think that the more conditioned you are, the more you can recover from. And in an absolute sense, that's true, but it's not true relative to what you're capable of. Similar percentages take it out of you as you get more advanced. And it's because the nervous system is untrained, which means it can't reach this kind of like theoretical red line. So you're basically too weak to work hard, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of structures. Muscles will grow. Your nervous system will get better and better. A lot of structures don't. So you have to kind of weigh out what the total systemic cost is of squatting 600 pounds for reps versus 300 pounds versus 95 pounds. And there's a general systemic cost as you get stronger that increases. So you have to take that into account in your training. So yeah, so in base strength, I broke that down. And practical programming probably did the best job, or one of the first jobs, I think, of really highlighting that's a key feature of people as they progress, that their ability to recover from substantially heavy loads lessens. So I kind of broadly categorize that as true blue all out efforts, specifically low rep. So like max singles is what most everybody does, where you fail or you're doing these like heavy negatives trying to wind up and then you get stuck and your buddy's got to pull it off. That super maximal type training most people fall into. Novices can get away with that shit all day. And it's not until they get stronger that they hit that wall, because that no longer works. Part of it is because it's a stale stimulus. It's not different. It's the same approach over and over and over. But a big part of that, because this happens with more calculated linear progressions, is the fact that they cannot recover the same way from the same efforts. So it's a problem of their recovery ability getting a little bit worse over time as they get stronger and stronger. And then you go in and you find that the same thing doesn't work as much. Now, the reason I still kind of emphasize this simple wave, I really like these 3-week waves. There's a lot of ways to do it. You don't have to do those. I like them because they're fun, they're stimulating, they're very easy to program, and it's a big catch-all. It checks a lot of boxes right out of the gate. Wendler's 5-3-1 is probably the most common example of a 3-week wave. It goes, this rep range, then this rep range, then this rep range, and then it drops back. You repeat the whole thing with a few more pounds. It's a linear progression with extra steps, but it allows that simple type of programming to be ran much, much longer. It allows more recovery because you're varying the effort as you go up over the 3 weeks. So you don't hit that brick wall from doing the same stimulus over and over that you can't quite recover from. It gives you more time before you revisit the same efforts. And that's huge. As you get stronger, that's huge. But it's also simplistic enough that novices still grow from it. And this is where I differ from someone like Ripito, who talks about it and says, novices need to be doing these 5-pound jumps and constantly working this range where it's the most weight they've ever handled. I agree with him that they can get away with that. And obviously things like starting strength work very well. They're predictable. But just because they can get away with it, I don't necessarily think it means they should. And that's key, because what do we know? We know novices improve from everything. We know that as they get stronger, that they are going to need to have a different conceptual understanding. So the thing they did as a novice, that's going to need to change as they get intermediate, especially if they get advanced, a whole different ball game as you actually get specialized and you have to get creative in your decision making there. So I would prefer a way that is just as predictable. It checks the same boxes. It works well for technique. It keeps the weight sub-maximal so you can practice technique. And it teaches you to work with a certain sweet spot of variation, not too much that you're getting out into space and losing the thread of what you're supposed to be training for. Because it's real easy for novices to do that and just end up doing what the hell ever out there. It's all the recency effect, the last thing they saw that they have to implement now, shiny object syndrome and whatnot. But enough variation that they can kind of play with it and see where that middle road is, where they can still keep things fresh, but it's still oriented towards a specific goal, because that's what you need to know to be a successful intermediate. So anyways, that's my rant on novice, intermediate, advanced. This is why I like these 3-week waves for everybody. It checks a lot of boxes, works well for everybody, and you can carry that forward successfully and play with that for quite a while before ever having to really revisit something more complex, like changing your split or changing your frequency or anything like that. So that's my clarification on that. Danny Earp's got another one. Like I said, guys, Patreon members get priority. So I know I already got one from him, but I'm going to get this one as well. I know you're not a huge fan, but is there a time and place for Swiss bar pressing these up on the shoulders? High frequency pressing has been bothering my shoulders recently. That's expected. High frequency is the answer, man. If you can survive high frequency work. If your joints, tendons, your infrastructure can handle it, that's the best way to get strong as quick as possible. And it doesn't even matter what it is. If it's this like classical powerlifting style that's become popular, some RPE based stuff like what Mike Tusher does, or if it's straight up DUP, there's a lot of different high frequency approaches. But if you can handle high frequency, it's the best way to go. That's the problem. The one is it's complex, it's hard to run, and two, it's hard to run because not everybody recovers the same. So most of us eventually experience inflammation, tendinopathy, bursitis, impingement, whatever. The stress over time for a lot of us causes more harm than good. It can be kind of a problem. So, anyways, time and place for Swiss bar pressing. Absolutely. I only kind of shit on specialty bars when they're used for cheap novelty because most people see them, get excited, want to use them just to see what it's about and never use it again. Or they're just compulsively rotating in all these bars because they think, well, variation, blah, blah, blah. It's just a new way to switch it up. I might as well just throw this bar in. And then it just kind of seems like it's all the same. So you're just running from one variation to another without any rhyme or reason. And that's what I think 95% of trainees end up doing. Swiss bar, it's a press of a weight off your chest or overhead. If the setup allows you to press without pain, absolutely. That means you're giving those structures a break. So you're allowing for recovery. So that means that's actually recommended. It means you have a reason for using a variation. It's premeditated. That's fantastic. That's absolutely what you want. To do, what do we got next? Aaron, hey, Alex, if you've taken a substantial amount of time off lifting, which I have, that is me currently right now. I know I said I was getting small. I'm actually getting kind of fat. How long could someone anticipate taking to get their strength back? I know there are many variables involved. This one's a pretty straightforward answer, my man, and that is almost no time at all. Comebacks are absurdly fast. This is one thing I've learned over 20 years of trial and error is to not get anxiety over my gains. There was this period when I was younger where I thought however strong I got, that's just how strong I was. It's like Goku doesn't get Super Saiyan 4 and then lose his ability to go there because he took a year off. Like that's just how strong he is. I had this same mentality, like that's I deadlift 500 pounds. I'm just a 500-pound deadlifter now, period. And actually, it's just the opposite. You decondition very fast. You detrain very fast. Strength eventually goes down. And that used to be just this soul crushing. I had this existential crisis over it. I spent my whole life doing this, and now my gains just slip away. And what does it all mean? It's like I have to walk this tightrope just to hold on to my strength. The beauty is you get it back so fast. You can spend 10 years working up to a 700-pound deadlift, and you could have it all just dwindle away. My first big setback was when I broke my legs like 6 years ago or so at this point. And I had to take a few months off of no lower body work. I was doing my best to bench, but no lower body work whatsoever. My quad shrunk by about 5 inches. It was horrendous. And I lost all the strength. It took me, I want to say about 8 weeks to get right up to where I was. And I'm serious. I mean, from going, I want to say my best squat was probably like a 565 before that. It dropped to, I think I couldn't squat 365 my first time back. And part of it was from my ankle being messed up, but strength wise, I remember 275, 315 moving real slow. So we're talking severe atrophy. Every week it was like 50-pound PRs because you have this muscle memory basically, but your body's really good at having these set points. And they do kind of change as time goes on. And your body wants to kind of catch up. Homeostasis, how I look at a lot of things, and homeostasis will change over time. Whether you're artificially strong, artificially weak, your body wants to be around the set point, but you can change that set point. Bottom line is if it takes you 10 years to get to a 700-pound lift and you lose 50% of it, it might only take you 6 or 8 weeks to get back within the ballpark. And actually from that injury, 6 months to the day, I think I hit my first 600-pound squat. So it's 3 months off. 6 months to the day of my surgery, mind you, 3 months off, 3 months of training, and I had hit that PR. So comebacks are very quick, and it's very freeing when you understand that, because it allows you to make very good, intelligent decisions, delay gratification. And that's where I am right now. I'm taking 2022 pretty much off. I'm going to dick around. I'm going to try new things. I'm going to train for fun. I'm going to let my body heal. I'm going to have a shitty dad bod. Nobody on YouTube is going to want to take advice from me. But I know that once I make that decision to come back, it's going to be a fun ride, man, because you just see everything wave back over you. All of that ability comes back, the coordination comes back, the aggression comes back. So anyways, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you have to grind for the rest of your life through injury and pain and stagnation. You don't. You can focus on different things. You can drop it back. There's a lot of options, right? And no matter how much you let something go, if there's a good reason for it, you'll be better off in the long term. So that's my take on that. And I plan on charting. I mean, this year I'm going to be charting my long descent into hell as I let my body just decay. And then I'm going to be looking forward to charting my comeback, because I do plan on competing in about 12 months if this year goes to plan. Freaky D, what's up, man? When I see a Tudor Bompa periodization book on a shelf, I know I'm observing a man of culture. Yeah, I got these fancy floating shelves at Hobby Lobby, so I get a look all legit. I'm going to have I think a neon either beer sign. Maybe I'll get my last name and a neon sign behind me, kind of light the place up. I already got these. I was really excited when I got these. No idea if I'm ever going to use them or not, but man, you want culture. Let's get that strobe light going. Now it's a party. Guys. Is that the one? No, it's this one. Yeah, it's like I get my textbooks when I find them at Goodwill and get them for $3.99. And I'm going to be honest, it's not like I've read through those cover to cover. I really got them, probably 15 years into training, because I was surrounded with a lot of guys that had a formal academic background, a lot of strength and conditioning guys, a lot of people with degrees, guys that went through kinesiology programs. And to keep up with the conversation, I always had this instinct, and I've talked about it before, and I will talk about it in the future, the role of that type of study in a lot of what we do. It's not a bad thing to have. It's not a bad thing to skim through or be familiar with. But that was like, so I could speak their language and I could like reference things. So I wasn't having to guess, what the actual line in the sand was with regards to the fields that they came out of, because I was constantly comparing where I learned my stuff from, or, where I came out of with this kind of scientific, like academic lean. And that was the way that I could translate, or the way that I wouldn't talk out of my ass if I was like addressing a point they made or whatever. I think I've skimmed through those books like twice. And it's funny because if you go now granted, it's a scenic route. I definitely went the scenic route, but when you go the long way around and then you come back to that stuff, a lot of the stuff in there, you kind of flip through and you're like, yeah, it's like, we went across this. Well, nobody does this. This isn't really important, but everybody knows this. And that's kind of the lens that I look at those type of textbooks through. But yeah, it looks good on my shelf. Looks like I know what the hell I'm talking about, right? Jacob Henderson. Hey, Bromley, do you recover on a program? How do you recover on a program you started too heavy on? I just did this with your Bull Massive program, started too heavy on squat. So how do you navigate that? Drop back. That's it. To start a program, especially one I write, I always, and I do it until I'm blue in the face. I always do might as well use this whiteboard that I spent so much time putting in. I always do the dirt road analogy. Like if you're a truck, this is I don't know, it's got the smokestack up there. If you're a truck and you're on a road, you get your momentum. If you're on hard pavement, solid foundational pavement, that's where you get your momentum. That's where there's traction. That's where there's no sliding or slippage. That's where you start. And that's the most important part. If you're going to be driving into the mud, eventually you get into some dirt, and dirt's a little bit looser, so you slip around a little bit more. But if you've got momentum, you can make it through. And by the time you get into the mud, that's where you're going to sail through. But that only depends on the momentum you got in the earlier phases. If you start in the mud, you're spinning your wheels. And then what happens is whatever distance you get before you get stuck, all you got to do is just back up and then take it forward again. So the dirt road, or sorry, the firm pavement, the asphalt, that's an analogy for the 3-week waves I run. It's a week of something easy, fast that you're confident with, a week of something a little challenging, and then the mud is a week of something that you push through, you suffer through a little bit. And everybody just wants to train in the mud, and they're spinning their wheels over and over, and they don't know why they're not moving forward. So that is how it works. It doesn't work if you start up against that obstacle. You have to have a foundational starting point for these phases. That's true for any program. They're going to have an introductory block, or maybe each block starts. That could be your deload. I mean, if you're in a really hard block periodization type programming, the deloads are where you kind of recover and get your bearings, and it gives you this launching point when the weight starts getting heavy again. It's foundational. So long story short, you have to absolutely start with the appropriate weight that is appropriately manageable for you to build up the momentum you need to. Jacob's a YouTube member. Appreciate that, man. I appreciate your contributions here. Benoit Turnier. Apologize. I'm an American idiot. Apologize for butchering everybody's names. Any tips on how to break through a strict press plateau? Always lock out the bar if I get around eye level, but I often get a sticking point on the bottom of the lift. Generically, I'm not a big fan of stick point training unless you are competitive, meaning you train very, very specialized for something like a power lifter would or an Olympic weightlifter would. Even Olympic lifters, it's not like they're doing stick point training on their RDLs or their squats. But for a power lifter or maybe a strongman, I'm not a fan of I'm only a fan of weak point training for specialized lifters like them or people who are very, very advanced. I'm assuming most of the people I talk to, don't fall directly into that category. They train recreationally or for less specific goals. You are best off not thinking about stick points. Just think about general training principles. Just think about what have you been doing for the last 8 weeks? What percentages have you been around? What type of effort has each workout had? This goes back, and this is base strength and peak strength. I beat this into the ground. You need periods of base building where the weight's a little bit lighter, where you can build technical experience, where you can use a lot of variety, do a lot of different things. Then you need another phase where you can up the effort a little bit, focus a little more on that lift, and allow yourself to recover from really, really hard efforts. And generally, there's so many ways to do it, and that's the crux of periodization in general. But anybody can conceptualize that. If you have a plateau, it just means that you're due for a phase shift. You've probably been going too heavy. If you routinely get stick points, that means you're routinely going heavy. So fucking stop it. Take 6 weeks. Don't let yourself go below 10 reps. Rebuild a foundation, then start to tick back up. In another 6 weeks, you'll be back up at the same weights, and you should just glide right through them. So that's my answer on plateaus. It's the same for anything. It's just, how do I get stronger? I mean, that's my explanation. How do I get past that benchmark I've been chasing forever? It's the same answer. Plateaus get taken care of by good programming. So don't forget that. Now going into sorry guys, I'm gonna have to skip over some of these lighter questions because I know there's some good ones down here, and I want to get to as many as I can. Christopher Nettles. Hey, Mr. Bromley, today's day 2 of training on a powerlifting team. Any tips? Know who the authority on the team is and listen to them. I haven't been specifically on a powerlifting team. As part of a strongman team, I trained with East West off and on for a couple of years. Big reason I ever did as much as I did in strongman. They were a fantastic group, taught me a lot of good things. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of talking. Everybody wants to put in their 2 cents. Everybody wants to feel like an authority. Find who's been there the longest or who's done the most, who's coached the best, and do what they do. Try not to let the noise of everybody get in your head. And enjoy the competition. Best part of lifting on a team is you can get competitive with some of the people there, and that helps drive progress. Does HAL 9000, does strength training really make that much difference from hypertrophy training, aka squats of 5 reps versus 6 to 9 reps? No. And I hate, and I would make another video right now because I was watching a lot of videos about this just before I filmed this. Every time I hear people talk about what they think of training to failure, what they think of this amount of volume, this rep range, I already kind of beat it in the ground last couple of videos I did, but that was a couple months ago. Maybe I'm due to revisit. It's the wrong type of questions, and it's this feedback, or it's this loop, because those types of questions get featured on YouTube because of the type of questions newbies ask who don't know any better, and because that's the title of these videos to try to answer newbie questions, it becomes a cycle of like misinformation, like blind leading the blind. No, I mean, are they different? Yes. Do they train slightly different thresholds? You're going to be using heavier, lighter weights, which means they'll be moving faster, slower, and energy system's going to be a little bit different. There's so many triggers for growth. The difference between 5 reps of strength training and 9 reps for the vast majority of people is inconsequential. They're more useful in the context of what you've already been doing. You adapt to rep ranges first. That's important to know when you're making changes. You adapt to rep ranges extraordinarily quickly. So if you've been doing a lot of sets of 5, something as simple as changing it to set to 7 in the context of you and what you have adapted to, that's meaningful. In the context of a broad recommendation, and this is how this question would be answered, by the way. It's another reason that academia is kind of bullshit in a lot of ways when it comes to this field. That's how the question would be addressed in the study. You would have a group do one, have a group do another, and compare some like minimal difference in outcome over an aggregate of people training hard and progressing normally and inserting the right amount of variation to keep progress going over time, which you'll never be able to account for in study of how well that was done to begin with. Especially long term. It's like butterfly effect. The longer they train, the more the variables just fly freaking out of control. The difference is insignificant. We can find this at the top echelon of strength sports mostly. I mean, strongman's probably the best example. You have guys that got insane presses and deadlifts by doing a ton of bodybuilding, power build. I hate the term power building. It's training. It's how people have trained since forever. And you have guys that got there through very fixed, very narrow, classical means of training. You have Vasily Alexiev had a 502 press overhead, doing very, very rigid Soviet Olympic lifting methods, and it worked. You also have someone like Eddie Hall who trains like a pro bodybuilder. At the top end, there's so many triggers for growth. It is absolutely meaningless for any individual recreational trainee to worry about that type of minutia. It's a distraction. It's the difference matters relative to you and exactly what you've adapted to recently. It's a valuable change. Over population, you can't say one's better than the other. The question itself is nonsensical. Excuse me. You've seen those standing pressing competitions, horrific. And I love the idea of a standing press. That was King Bozo. I love the idea of a standing press, a competitive lift, infinitely more exciting than benching. Benching is the fucking worst part of powerlifting. And it doesn't even make sense that you need a bench to execute this lift. I think powerlifting would be way better off if you had a standing press, but it creates a whole bunch of questions and problems. Like, yeah, they can get pretty horrific. I just talked about Vasily Alexiev, that hip pop, like pop the hips and lean back and then push yourself way back away and stand up. Like, it got kind of ugly. You can be creative. There's ways to create rules around that. Was this scheduled 7:30 in Australia? God, we got Aussies watching. That's fantastic. All the way around the world. No, this was not scheduled. I did it on a lark. I spent 2 hours trying to research and come up with a video topic to edit, and I hit a wall. So I'm like, I'm going to go live. I got to get something out. More sticking point questions. I already kind of got to that. And anything I don't answer, you can always ask again in the future. Again, Patreons get priority, as do people that use the super chats. Hey, Bromley, I love all your books and appreciate your content. Real question with all the love. Who do you have editing and proofreading your ebooks? Myself, which is why they suck. I know exactly what that question means. No, I know base strength had a ton of typos. I keep meaning to go back. Um, I was eager to get that one out. I was over eager, so I skipped a few steps with that. I think peak strength did a bit better. I think I got most of the typos out of that one. I'm pretty happy with the formatting, but again, I think with the charts I have, that every now and then something will be, you know, spaced or indented. Please believe me when I say that's something I'm trying to clean up with every book. I think this last one was pretty much free of issues. If you find one in my deadlift book, please let me know. But every book here on out, I will be paying for a service and I will be going through them more thoroughly. I'm new to this and I appreciate everybody who's here now, who's along for the ride. I sincerely do, because my instinct is always to wait until I have it perfect. And I found that with content creation, like with art or with writing or with anything else, you just have to go. And that part of that applies to the content, and some of that applies to actually the things I put out, um, even if they're rough. Because everyone I put out, I promise you, I'm resolving this. Everyone I put out is going to get better. It's going to be tighter. So yeah, I appreciate it. Look at it as a collector's edition. You know, everybody that got their first edition, uh, you know, 2019 or 2020 version of base strength that will be discontinued very shortly. It's a collector's item. And I do plan on releasing editions of this in the future that are cleaned up and expanded upon. So look out for those. Um, uh, Jaden Reese, why did I use the Palloff press in peak strength as a chosen exercise for anti-rotation? Um, I liked it really because one, it was extremely easy to set up. It was low effort. And I felt that to be one of the most effective ones for visualizing exactly how everything was going on. I think it's like a first order coordination exercise. I don't know how strong realistically you're going to get from doing a Palloff press, but from right off the bat, when your midsection's made of pudding, you have no real like sense of feedback. You have no real innervation. You know, things just aren't really recruiting, or when they do recruit, they go dead very quickly. This is a good, I think, first order like coordination conceptualization exercise, and it's super easy to set up. Most 90% of the time, I tell people to get on the floor, they just skip it. They just don't do it. So that's part of it. Checked a few boxes. Long term, what are you going to do with a Palloff press? Probably not a lot, but I know the big obstacle for so many people is physically feeling and visualizing the tension in their midsection. Feel how the abdominals lock down and stay isometrically contracted while you have this external force trying to move you. And then once you feel it, you can kind of apply that to all of your main lifts. So I see that as being the most important thing, getting the conceptualization, building that bridge. And then once you apply it to a squat, a deadlift, or anything else, it's there. Whether you do ab work or not, that will start to foster you'll start to foster that quality in the context of all the gains you make in your main lift. So that's really why. There's a lot of others. There's a million variations you could do, which is why some of these functional fitness guys stay in business, because every video they can come up with some other random but not really importantly different variation. Um, so I like to just pick a few that have worked, and that's what I promote. And if other people have others, there's no doubt in my mind that they'll do more of the same thing. Uh, oh, here we go. Strongman question. Thank God. Man, I was just thinking the other day how not enough of my followers are strongman. Every time I put out a strongman video, it gets like 5 views. Ben Kissinger, seeing more sandbag pressing these days. USS Nats put it in their event list. Do you think this is just a psycho trend, or will that event become more popular? Here, say you can never guess. Some of the things that got really popular, I hated, and I even did my own non-violent civil disobedient protest with. God, I can count. Sandbag toss is the one right now that I hate. I hate sandbag toss. I wouldn't hate it so much if it wasn't for the fact that it became popular, showed up at every show. So it went from 10 years I did this sport and I never did a throw. All of a sudden it's in every Nats, every Arnold, every OSG. People are like, oh, it's a crowd pleaser. What we're doing is like hardly situated for the crowd anyways. You want to please a crowd? Don't have 400 athletes at one event. It's not about pleasing the crowd. It's easy to set up. It's easy to cycle through. It's convenient for the promoters. That's why they do it. So Anyways, there's that. And I'm bad at throwing, right? Can you tell I'm a little biased? So sandbag pressing, I mean, shit, they had the Mauser block for a while, which I like Paul Mauser. He's a good dude and I get what he was trying to do, but it was $1,000 steel rectangle. It had no versatility and it didn't meet any of the entrepreneurial requirements of a new business. It was easy to reproduce. Now it's not proprietary. It didn't really solve a need. It wasn't versatile and it was extremely expensive. So when that kind of went away, I breathed a sigh of relief because I hated block pressing. I imagine sandbag pressing is like block pressing, but infinitely worse because it's still heavy as shit, but it's harder to get a handle. With the block, you can at least find the corners and get stable. With the sandbag, I mean, that's ugly. I don't know if it's going to stick around for any period of time. It's not going to stick around permanently. They've done odd pressing in the past, and they go through their phases, so it's hard to say. But just another reason why when you're training your press for strongman, you can't just jerk. You have to get push pressing is the best intermediary, but you do have to have some static pressing strength because otter shit, that's the only way you're going to get it up. Nobody's going to jerk a strongman bag. It bothers me, but then again, it's part of the sport that keeps it interesting. So I'm on the fence. Some days I hate all the variety or the trends. Some days I appreciate that it forced me to get good at something I otherwise would not have done. So, go figure with that one. Have I ever looked at Greg Knuckles' 21-week programs? I think it's called Average to Savage. Okay, so I think you're talking. I don't know if Average to Savage is a 21-week program. I thought he had his 21 free programs. I did a video series on all of those, and I meant to get to Average to Savage. Actually, Knuckles was kind enough to give me access to those programs or that program specifically, and I've just lagged on getting around to it. So I plan on going back to program reviews. That's at the top of the list. A little wrench got thrown into the works because, and it's a little, but he renamed it. So when it goes into like search engine optimization, what people are going to be searching for is a little bit of confusion. He renamed it to be sensitive to a group of people he thought might be offended by the original name, which I'm not going to comment on that. But then it's like, how do I reference the original program that got really popular without also doing that? I don't know. It's a mess, but it is at the top of my list. Greg's a nice guy and he was really, really cordial when I talked to him with giving me access to that. So I do plan on getting to it. Thanks for your cues to improve deadlifts. They're working so well. Glad they're helping, man. Glad they're helping. Jacob Henderson would love a generic warm-up template from you. Okay. Generic warm-up. The most generic warm-up is starting with the bar and adding a small amount of weight over 8 to 12 jumps. So, and it's all relative to what you're doing. If you're working up to 100 pounds, that's 10-pound jumps about. If you're working up to 1,000 pounds, you're going to be looking at, bigger 50 to 100-pound jumps. So it's all relative to what you can do. But the most generic warm-up and what I've done for years, start with the bar. So many reps, could be sets of 5, could be sets of 15. I like more reps with lighter weight because it gets blood in the joints, helps me feel better sooner. So that's why I like it. Even space out all the way up to your pre-planned working sets, making sure not to blow your wad, unless that's what you're trying to do. There's methods of warming up like bodybuilders use or pyramid type programs where you keep the rep. You can say sets of 10 or 12 all the way up to a heavy set of 10 or 12. That'll create some fatigue. So if you're on a mass building program or hypertrophy program, that would work pretty well. But for most strength purposes, don't blow your wad. Keep it an RP 4 all the way up and make even jumps all the way up to your working weight. Aside from that, it depends on really you. There's nothing I would recommend specifically as a warm-up because it will all be determined by personal preference and issues you're dealing with and what lift you're doing. The things that I typically recommend, I call them buy-ins, but they're just things that you would do later in the workout that you're likely not to do. So you do them first and it can help warm you up, get you psychologically prepared, get you really eager to do the heavier lifting. So I like those. So for, pressing, a warm up, I'll do like rear delt raises, bent raises or something, or face pulls or external rotation. Shoulder gets nice and hot, gets you ready to handle some weight, does good work by strengthening your rotator cuff, your rear delts, and I'm not likely to do them at the end of the workout. So it fits. For deadlifts, I did reverse hyper and bent barbell rows first for a while. Worked fantastically well. So I really like doing those smaller movements. And even if it fatigues you a little bit in the beginning, you adapt really, really quickly. So don't think like, oh, I have to be 100% fresh, or you got to get out of that way of thinking. It's okay to build up a little fatigue. That's part of how you adapt. Man, we always get rolling. Always get rolling. You guys just come in with the questions. I appreciate it. I get OCD. I want to go in order, but love to see you shred body fat. Yeah, me too. Hold your breath. No, I do. I'm planning right now. I'm planning on getting my knees good. They're getting a little better every day. I'm doing a rehab protocol for that. And then I do want to start running again. I used to run a lot, but my weight and my knees kind of prevented that. So why is it rare to see strongman programming weighted pull-ups in their training? I don't know that it's rare. I know a lot of powerlifters that don't do pull-ups. I know a lot of people in general that don't do pull-ups. Pull-ups are a great exercise, but there's a lot of ways to work your back that don't include them. I know some that do, that swear by it for shoulder health. I don't really have an opinion on that. I don't really know. I don't think it's cultural or specific to strongman. Another one from Australia. Man, I hope you guys are surviving those COVID camps, man. And this is where the channel gets political. Tips I could give on giving a brace at the bottom of a deadlift. Yeah, practice. That's it. When you start, before you deadlift, do your bracing exercises, 90-90 breathing, Powerlifting presses, dead bugs, side planks, regular planks, whatever you like. Just do a few of them. Look for the receptivity in your midsection where you can feel the abdominals locked down. Practice squeezing and then breathing in while keeping the abs tensed. When you get to the bottom of a deadlift, start at the top, get your brace set, and then come down slowly as you maintain the brace. And the last thing you should feel before you pull the weight is that tension. And it's just practice. If you're used to just relaxing, taking a big breath, and then squeezing, you're going to lose it. And that's just that big belly breathing that powerlifting unfortunately made popular for a few decades. It's quick and dirty, and it'll get you tighter, but unfortunately, it will lose you a sense of how the abs are actually supposed to work. It will make you less secure in day-to-day life, and it will condition, I think, movement dysfunction over time. Dave Tate had a good piece for a while, a couple of years back, when he was working with somebody to correct a lot of his hip issues, because he came from that era. He came from the let's suit up and squat 900,000 pounds. Let's put all the tension on us in the world and just get the biggest, fattest breath you can get and push out against the belt. And then he did this piece, decade, 2 decades, 3 decades later, where he was having a guy try to work out all of his issues as a result of that. So it's not uncommon for the guys that have been doing that for a long time. Possible to become much stronger after 40? Absolutely. If you were world class by 35, no. But for the generic person, absolutely. I compete against Sean Shoemaker. A bunch of guys are 40s. Darren Heltemi, Sean Shoemaker's like 45. He has like a high 800-pound pull in the 231s. He's the guy that gave me hope. I thought I only had 2-3 years left. And I'm like, I look at him and I'm like, I got a good decade. Got a good decade left. Missed you, bro. Thanks, man. I missed you too. Which pre-made program and base strength do I like the most? Those are examples, man. And I knew writing it, people were going to run them as written, but I want to highlight as much as possible. They're templates. They're meant to be screwed with. They're meant to be kind of fit around you and what you need to do. I can't say that I like one more than the other. For most people, I like the ones that feature more volume in each workout, so lower frequency. And for most people, I like the ones that start with higher reps, because most people benefit from that right off the bat, because people hate it, so they don't do it. So it's an easy excuse me, man. So it's an easy recommendation to make that applies to more people, I think. So Yeah, I really recommend people try I need to give it a better name. I just have it as my favorite base phase, but where I volumize, where I go up through 12s, 3, 4, 5 sets, 10s, 3, 4, 5 sets. That works disgustingly well. And if you've only been doing powerlifting specialization with low reps, you will grow like a freaking weed. I love telling this story. I had a kid quit on me because in his first month, he got a bunch of stretch marks and he was mortified. So he stopped. Most people, most hard gainers trying to gain muscle, that's what they're looking for. What happened to my bracing book? I'm meaning to re-upload it. I think I had it free. I'm trying to think if somebody in the Facebook forum has it. You check the base strength forum. I'll find it and get it up. That my bench thing, I've been meaning to like do something different with. I just haven't gotten around to it. I'll check that out. Thoughts on the Hepburn myth? Man, I've had a lot of people ask me that. I might do a video on it. I don't have a lot to say about that one. It's a very old school pro. People like it because it's old timey. So people get enamored with the romanticism of older styles of training. Back guys got bigger with less information and less gear. And I really think the lack of information is why people were able to get strong, because you had to go through trial and error, which we all have to do anyways. All this information we get dumped on, even the information I give you, you have to go put it into practice and tweak it until you get the right answer. You are always on the hook. You are never not on the hook for taking notes, paying attention, and tweaking things until it gives you the right answer. The right answer being steady, consistent, predictable growth. It's a simple step loading program. It's just very long, very slow, right? So he goes from doubles over so many sets and he changes like one rep a workout multiple times a week until eventually it's like it goes from 8 doubles to 8 triples. So it's step loading. Volume goes up consistently over a period of time that maybe is slow enough that a much stronger person can be able to tolerate. So the rate of progression isn't so high. Maybe that's a factor. I don't even know that it's established as being productive. I don't know a lot of people that have ran it. In fact, yeah, I've never heard of somebody running it start to finish. Maybe you could find something online of somebody that actually ran it and gave their notes. But he probably liked training that way. He was probably dedicated towards it, made it work for him. And after you do the same thing so long, you find ways to adapt it, make it work for you. There's a lot of different methods. The biggest things, like Ed Cohen says, my favorite quote, make it work. Doesn't matter what you run, make it work. I know guys that have trained 2-a-days, 5 days a week and gotten great. I know guys that, I'm not kidding, would do 3 working sets per exercise a week over 2 or 3 exercises, and that's it. There's so many different triggers for growth, so many different ways to make them grow. Love my program review series. Thanks, man. I plan on coming back to that. I was just running out of programs. I didn't want them to get redundant either. I want to make sure that when I review them, they're helping people form like this cohesive idea of why this stuff works. A lot of the program reviews pointing out what's arbitrary. It's like, I can see the thread of progression. It's like, oh, okay, this works because X, Y, or Z. A lot of the importance is realizing that as long as you have a good skeleton, you know how you're progressing, what your recovery timeline is like, and how it's going to work with the other lifts. Most of the decisions are arbitrary and are just done for branding. If you were ever to host or organize a strongman competition, what events would you include? Man, another strongman question. I've done a few events, actually. The biggest one was before COVID. We did the LA County Fair. I was very fortunate to get that, and I would have done it again, but COVID sidelined that. What did we have? We had a heavy-ass yoke walk. I really like the overhead series. I hate medleys where all the implements are weighted the same. I like medleys that are done in sequence because you can chart how difficult or heavy each one is, and the better pressers get farther. So I think it's much more dramatic to watch, and it makes more sense. And promoters usually do a lousy job of comparing the difficulty in these kind of open medleys. You'll have something that's a little too easy that's worth the same number of points as something that's really, really hard. Anyways, so it started with like a 205 barbell, and then it jumped 20 or 30 pounds over different implements, and it got all the way up to a 400-pound log. So I think there were 8 implements, and I gave everybody 2 minutes to do it. Probably went too long. Definitely went too long. I think 1.5 minutes is the most. So that was a little ambitious, but I didn't get the chance to tweak that. I actually like that as an event. And I chose that because I didn't have weight classes. So I needed events where I could compare everybody. So max effort events are easy to do. Choose your own weight. If it's for reps, the heaviest weight wins. And that one was a simple, it was light enough. It started light enough that the novice or smaller guys could do it, and it ended heavy enough that you could get separation from the bigger guys. So those are the events actually I like. I like races here and there, sparingly and heavy enough that there's separation. I hate light, fast, split second foot races. I can't even explain to you how much I hate them. And it's not because by itself it's really a bad thing to have. It's because there's so many of them, and it became a defining feature of the sport. And the sport gets very, very different. The podium gets very, very different depending on, do you have a lot of split second foot races? Well, do you have them at all? How many of them do you have? And what's the barrier for absolute strength? Meaning, how many strength specific events do you have to kind of balance that out? And we saw that at Worlds, man. Worlds up until probably 2007 or 8 was pretty damn light. You're talking about 260 farmer walks. You're talking about more long distance stuff. You're talking about really light, fast stuff. And then the Arnold came and got damn heavy, damn heavy. And the world had to catch up basically to stop looking ridiculous. So I remember the first time they went over 400 pounds on the stone. And still, you have guys loading up, Tom Stolman loading a 630 stone, and nobody's cracking really 500-pound stones in contests. So, anyways, long story short, Marius dominated worlds in that day, never placed above fourth at the Arnold. That tells you the sport can become very, very different. I do like the variety, but I think it should be even and predictable and somewhat consistent. So, anyways, greetings from Switzerland. Welcome, Yassine. Sweaty palms and barbell rolls my palms when I press. How do you fix your grip except chalk? You would use chalk. That's how you fix sweaty palms. You get liquid chalk. If the gym doesn't like it, get liquid chalk. But if you're lifting, a lot of it, especially strongman, but lifting in general is friction management. So if you're sweating in your palms, the bar is going to slip. How much should a novice strongman include event training to get enough practice without interfering with progress on core lifts? How much should a novice strongman include? Novice strongman can do a lot of work. Same thing with barbell lifting. Novice strongman can do a lot of work. So that doesn't mean you should go out and do all the work, but it means walking that recovery tightrope isn't so important. If there's two ways to do it, I bias towards doing event training on one day. It's easier to organize, makes more sense. Keep it to technical run throughs as opposed to things that just nail you into the ground. Don't get stuck doing challenge work where the first time you barely lift a 220 stone, you go and do a bunch of missed attempts at the 250. Like that's how most people end up doing it. Don't do it that way. EMOMs are great. You do EMOMs for like 1, 2, 3 reps with something that's manageable, not something that kills you. So you can build technical understanding, move faster, more efficient. You can do that with odd presses. You can do it with loads. You can do it with carries. There's a lot of ways to do that. Keep everything fast because being fast is more important than being able to grind out something ugly. The event training for a novice and mostly for everybody else should drive technical understanding, speed, transition, things like that. The barbell stuff should drive strength. So look at it that way. You'll be fine. The other way to do it is to do an event or two in the midst of your barbell training. I hate that. Some people do it and they do it with success. That's hard, man. It's really hard to predict how you're going to respond to it. How would I go about programming loaded carries? I have some protocols in the books. I think I throw some in Peak Strength. They're pretty easy to program. Usually you don't have even you can't load a bag evenly the way you load a barbell. So as long as you have something that looks like a really light bag, a really medium bag, and a really heavy bag, I just program usually just different thresholds. Sprints with a light bag, long rucks with a medium bag, short carries with a heavy bag, and you can just rotate through them. You don't have to be as precise with that type of work. And then the things you progress, going longer on the long carries, going faster on the fast carries, things like that. Forgive me for my noises I make when I'm thinking. I know that's distracting. Do you think it's possible to become a strongman middleweight pro completely natty? Yeah, if you're born with fantastic genetics, that's what that's a trade-off. Um, if gear didn't exist, the best are the ones who are typically going to be the ones who are the most genetically favored. Uh, and there's always the ability to make up for it with really good programming, with really good approaches. Of course, that exists. How much that can make up ground depends on you and where you're at. So if you're not dealing with a certain toolkit, if you're 5'7", you're not going to be a 231 middleweight pro natty. Like you're just, unless you have those freak genetics where you're the guy that could have, hey, Muggsy Bogues played in the NBA, right? Unless you're the guy that can, jump 3 feet in the air and is super athletic and can maneuver around anything. There's only so much that we actually have control of, and getting to the upper echelon of athletics requires having a certain number of things in your tank. So that's a disadvantage, right? So if you're going into it with that disadvantage, that means you better damn well have some other aces up your sleeve. And look, competing isn't for everybody. The purpose of competition isn't that everybody gets a pro card, everybody wins. I mean, shit, I think I've won 1 or 2 contests like ever. And I haven't even got a pro card to this day. I might never get one. The purpose of competition is the process. It's the journey. So as easy as it is to get enamored with all this stuff and think, hey, I love strongman. It's the greatest thing ever. I just desperately want to, more than anything in my life, I want to be a strongman pro. So as you're new, you start making all these big life choices around it. Like, no, you're going to find in a year that the way you see it might not be the same as the month you started. In 5 years, in 10 years. Most people, 98% of people that get into it don't stay in it more than a couple years. So don't go messing yourself up with gear, with anything else, or destroying yourself because you decided at one point this is what you want to do. It's a labor of love, right? So do it for a while, see how good you get. The natty question that comes as you see competition on the horizon. You make an honest conversation of how much it means to you. How can you adjust your programming to accommodate a cut? No, it's not really possible to gain muscle on a cut. That's not true. It depends where if you're more novice rather than more advanced, and if you're fatter rather than leaner, both those things. Here's your homeostasis. You have more body fat than your body really wants. You're artificially fat, and you're a novice, so you're kind of artificially weak given what your body's what your body wants to be. You can come to the middle. The average body doesn't want to be fat and weak. So if you are established, then yes, you need to be a little bit more careful. And that's hard for me to question, man. I'm not a nutritionist, and nutrition goes into that heavily. So I would say just find a nutritionist, get your diet. That's where you're going to screw things up. It's not necessarily your training. It's by not having your diet dialed in. Your nutritionist can work around whatever you do, whether you're high volume, low volume, peaking in a base phase, whatever you want. Get a nutritionist. Strongman training in a commercial gym. You can't do event specific training in a commercial gym, but when you're newer, being stronger is the most important thing. So get your squat, deadlift, and press as good as you can. Do things that put you into a minute and a half threshold as far as conditioning. Deadlift, AMRAPs or not. Deadlift AMRAPs, EMOMs every 30 seconds. 20 rep squats were great. Things that push you in that threshold. Dumbbell holds for your grip. That's hard, man. You really do need to get your hands on equipment. So even if you can only get in 2-3 times before a contest, do what you can to find the equipment. And you know what? The equipment's easy enough to get nowadays. There was one guy, Alan Beninga, who still, I think, does it off a MySpace page from Kentucky. Hard as hell to get a hold of. Doesn't even have a website. He was the first one doing it before Rogue did it, before Titan did it, before anybody was making this stuff. It was hard as hell to get strongman equipment. He was always kind of cheap. But if you wanted it good, it was really expensive. There's no excuse. If you want to compete, spend a couple $100 to get a pair of farmer handles, some sandbags to simulate loading a log. That'll set you up for most of what you're going to do. Deadlifting you can do anywhere. Pressing you can do just about anywhere. What have I noticed had the most positive impact on my overhead strength? Overhead pressing. That's a style I chose. There's other ways to get your press strong. You go very, very specific, or you can go broader and flesh out in a bigger way. When I was younger, I did bodybuilding workouts, but when I got kind of medium, like stronger than average, to competitive, that was push jerk, push jerk, push jerk, push jerk twice a week for about a year and a half, and it exploded. Part of it was because that was on top of all the volume training I did early on. Again, that was my base before I went into this very specific peak phase. Part of it was the technique aspect of a push jerk. I applied that later on to a push press, worked similarly well, bridged that gap. So specificity, but given that I had this wide base, so it's hard to say one thing. It was a journey over time, which is why you have to think it in more than one dimension. Man, we're getting to best split exercise for big legs. Anything that allows you to squat twice a week, man. Squatting frequently without wrecking your knees. So you're not going to be doing a lot of deadlifting. There's plenty of templates out there. High reps. I love 20 rep squatters. You can dedicate yourself to that, like super squats, or you can alternate. You can do a volume and intensity split. You can do a heavy light split. Anything that has you squatting with frequency. Unless you're a really long-legged bastard, you have to sit way back when you squat, bend over a lot. Those guys might have to see do other things to get their quads bigger. More sled drags, backward sled drags, leg pressing, leg extensions, and hack squat, on and on. All right, we got to the end of it. Oh, you guys gave me a break. It's about the journey, losers. Taxtro, I'm putting that on a t-shirt and I'm giving you $0 for it. That made this whole stream worthwhile. Man, thank you. God damn it, I'm writing that down. It's about the journey. Losers. That's all right. I can't wait to tell my wife that. My wife is gonna die at that. 2 weeks before powerlifting meet, had a peak. My peak is now. God, geez, no pressure, right? I can't answer that. It depends on where you are. A novice, somebody who's not very strong or new to the game, can lift pretty heavy up until a few days out. Intermediates need at least a week or so. You need 2 weeks or more for someone who's very strong. So the good news is you're going to get some good notes for your peak right now. On a more serious note, I'll answer this last question because of that gem you dropped. Taxtro. Do you know any resources for increasing strength endurance? I tried to follow a few programs, but they were impossible for me. I had to increase pauses, reduced reps. It depends on the context. What's the context of strength endurance? Is it for a sport, or is it just you have some rep goals, some arbitrary rep goals on a lift? Why are you wanting to increase strength endurance, or how are you measuring strength endurance? Because I could look at a wrestler. Wrestler needs strength endurance, but they're going to get most of that through training. There aren't a lot of drills you can do in the gym that are going to mimic what you're doing for that sport. So you need to get strong. Once you get strong, that strength will phase into, it'll transition into the sport-specific stuff you do for, say, a fighter or wrestler. So it might be beneficial to do some like longer threshold, minute and a half threshold of strength endurance stuff, or do intervals. It might be worthwhile, but the real fight endurance or for that type of sport, even with football, that interval capacity comes from doing a lot of run throughs, more so than anything in the gym. Now, how I measure strength endurance, because I need it for strongman, is by my rep capacity at lighter percentages and my ability to recover in between events. Really, I do that very high reps. It's easy to do, honestly. Rep endurance you gain and lose very quickly. You can mess around with things like EMOMs or start reducing the rest intervals on. So you say you do, eight doubles with a minute in between. You can move that to triples, or you can move it to 45 seconds in between or 30 seconds in between. So you can progress time. I think it's easier just to throw in a, a set of pain training. Derek Poundstone used to do pain training where he do 150 rep barbell curls with an empty bar. Where he had that bodybuilding physique. He came from a lot of bodybuilding style training where he would just do a lot of reps and reps and reps, and it's why he was able to hang. Density sets. You have a set time period, and you don't worry about a single set. Say I have 2 minutes to do as many reps as I can. That's a good way of doing it. 20 rep squats, I love, or any high rep squat, because you can hang out and recover. There's a lot more density because it's not, you get up to, fatigue's linear and then you're done. It's fatigue builds up and then you can rest a little bit, then fatigue spikes again and then you rest, and you can do that in a very short period of time. So those are the types of things I like, but it's a tricky question to answer. How far out from a strongman comp should you start event training? You should if you're wanting to compete, you should always be doing some event training, just generic stuff. Specifically for the meet, advanced guys, I'll give myself about 6 weeks. That's usually good, but I've been doing this for 15 years. More novices might need more time because they have a lot more to get out of each event. 8 weeks, 12. God, if you get a full 3 months, that's pretty solid. Usually if I'm 12 weeks out, and I get if I get the list of events for a big show, I start incorporating them. And then at about 6 weeks out, that's when I start going ham, where that's like all I'm doing. Oh, you want to, with pull-ups, want to brag with pull-ups. Okay. Strength endurance for pull-ups. So you want to do a lot more pull-ups. So it's a body weight movement. Man, God, these are things that, Josh Bryant would answer with all of his prison knowledge of how to train in prison. Calisthenic guys would be able to answer that. I'm sure I could come up with some progression, but you'd want to ask some calisthenic guys. I always just focus on getting my pull-up stronger. So if I'm increasing the amount of weight I can use in a weighted pull-up, that's a sign that I'm stronger. I'm always able to do more reps. But if you're at the point where you're already at 25, 30 pull-ups, then it very well may be strength endurance that's going to keep you going as opposed to just getting stronger. But I'm hard pressed to answer that in any meaningful way. It's not really my wheelhouse. All right, guys, my voice is getting hoarse. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. I'm going to get some more substantial videos, some topic-oriented videos up in this week. I'm going to go back to editing. I'm going to get on an editing schedule. If you want recommendations, let me know what kinds of things you want to see, what other stuff out there you liked that people were doing that you want my 2 cents on. I'm happy to take recommendations. I'm trying to overhaul this channel a little bit, but we're going to be doing some big things. I got space to work. I got room to think. I can film it any time of day. So we're going to be doing some big things. So look out for that. So got to give the obligatory. Check out Peak Strength, Peak Strength, Base Strength, Superior Deadlift on Amazon or on my store, EmpireBarbellStore.com. Hit me up. We're still doing online coaching or templates. We're doing $97 pre-made 12-week templates. So drop into my DM on Instagram for that. Just Alex__Bromley. And that's all I got for today, man. Thanks for watching. Next time I'll give you guys a good amount of leeway before I actually go live. I'll be doing these periodically every week or two. So save your questions up for that. Thanks so much. This is Bromley coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. Until next time, I'll see you.